Welcome to another Straight Up Tuesday tip. I'm 𝗤𝘃𝗃𝗀𝗃. With me as always is Mark Ainley. And with us for the first time, Nick Oberhouse over from DAWGS. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thrilled to be here.
They appreciate you reaching out. Good timing. We actually just had dogs removed at one of my buildings about 2 weeks before. So for those, let's start with a quick overview. We're talking about dogs today. If someone's sitting there going, hey, what's that? Give us the overview. What are we talking about here? What is the solution?
Yeah, and I guess full circle, right? I went to a property manager training on the South Side. Someone recommended that I start listening to you guys' podcast, checked out a few episodes, reached out. And Tom, when I sent that message, you're like, yeah, I just got off the phone with Jessica. I'm like, oh my gosh, it didn't even cross my mind to actually check the database.
It was also hilarious because she had just taken my credit card info and then you reached out. I was like, oh, how convenient, dude.
So I think that a fair number of Chicago-based listeners would have maybe seen our service around the community, but essentially we're steel board up. So it's a rental service. Essentially, if any single property owner or property manager would want to do this on their own, it would just be prohibitively expensive. So what we do is full service. Our crews will come out, install, maintain, and then remove. So then, the customer, building owner, rehab, or whatever it may be, is only paying for the service for however many months, in some cases years, if something is going to take a really long time, but most of the cases just a couple of months. And really, we are the solution when you just can't stop intruders from getting into your building. So whether those be issues with break-in, vandalism, theft, squatting, many people have liability issues, right? Like vacant buildings are dramatically more likely for a fire to occur. And then obviously if it sets the building next to it on fire, then that's a whole nother set of challenges. At the end of the day, if in Chicagoland, if someone has ever bought a property from like the CCLB, Cook County Land Bank, like scavenger sale, right? It's typically going to come with DAWGS assets because we're going to at least have the building secured when you buy it, and then you have the option to extend service. We're on all of the Cook County Land Bank properties and many other properties you may see around the Chicagoland area. So,
yep, yeah. In my experience, and it's when you see them in different neighborhoods, but in any neighborhood, if you're buying from an REO agent, if you're buying from, hey, this went to almost, something that almost went to demo court, and now they had to get a servicer, like whatever, any of those, like it's usually going to come with the dogs on there. It's like, all right, it's already there. Like, let's just change the subscription to my name until I get my permits and I can start going here. Because you're going to have that time of vacancy in a building that the whole neighborhood knows is sitting there vacant. And it takes one, go to listen to our, go to our investor stories. Like we have multiple squatter stories, and all of a sudden, instead of paying, minuscule amount per month, like you have a squatter and you have a 12-month delay in your timeline.
Hours. It all happens in hours too.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
Yep.
How sophisticated these thieves are is just disconcerting, right? Like there's this building right now. It's a multifamily on the west side that we have secured. It's a massive property, right? I mean, it's essentially half of a city block, and currently being managed by the courts, but it is 400 windows, and our default is just to secure the windows that are immediately accessible. So if it's really bad and you're having really bad issues, we can cover every window, but our default is anything that's at garden level or first floor, so that every window and door is covered so that no one can break into it, right? And this building is huge, right? 400 windows and like 40 doors, and every night there must have been someone from the community going around and checking every single door, just seeing someone left a door unlocked. And in a single night, this building has now been secured for 18 months, which is really abnormal, right? Typically it's much shorter, but in a single night, the intruder got in, stole all the appliances and all the copper piping from 19 units in a single night. Do you realize how sophisticated that person or that team had to be to actually orchestrate that and execute that in a single evening? That's impressive. I mean, frustrating, but
no, it's organized crime.
It's impressive.
It's fairly organized. Like I've seen it in our properties where we walk in the next morning, and they pull out the wire and they actually hang the outlet, the switch from the thing. So it's like they just do a very nice job, almost like a slap in the face. Like, hey man, I took all your wiring, but I left it nice for you too. So
the frustrating part is they cause like tens of thousands of dollars of damage for like $400 of copper.
Yes, that is the killer.
Yeah, I've always thought like, dude, I'll just leave like a note like, hey, if you're trying to rob me, I'll just quick pay you the 500. Like, just leave my building alone.
If that was an option, everyone would do it, right?
Yeah. So like, how long has DAWGS been around, and what was the solution before this? Or was there an inspiration for this?
Yeah, so DAWGS has been around for 15 years. You know, this concept was actually around in Europe for much longer, because the squatting laws used to be stronger in Europe, and now squatting is becoming more of an issue in the States. But you know, before DAWGS, there are a lot of horror stories, and I guess they're kind of funny as long as you aren't the person that they have occurred to. But you know, I know a situation where in New York, there was a realtor who, you know, it was a townhouse, and in order to, before DAWGS, they would have to cinder block up all the doors and windows and mortar them in place just to try to keep intruders out from some of these properties. And many illicit activities were occurring in these buildings that were both sad and frustrating. But, you know, we're always coming in, coordinating with local law enforcement or with the building owner to make sure that the property could be single family, could be multifamily, could be a commercial, could be mixed use. Hell, it could be a hospital, school, parking structure, power plant, anything in the above, right? Our guys are well trained to figure out how to lock it down. And before, I mean, the lengths that people would go to try to reduce the issues caused by those break-ins were pretty crazy, right? I mean, actually putting up bricks in order to make sure that no one could get in. So,
man, that's what you know. You just mentioned the one story of the one night of, you know, getting the 19 units. Give us another horror story here, just because I like hearing them. Completely selfish.
Yeah, let me think of a good one.
Makes you feel better. It makes you feel better that the crap that happens to you, it doesn't only happen to you. Like, well, while you think about it, Nick, I'll tell a quick story of this isn't how DAWGS saved me, but it's actually how someone worked around DAWGS did for me. I had a house that kept breaking into. It was clearly the guys in the neighborhood. I just almost felt like them laughing at me when I come in there in the morning, and kept breaking through the board. So got DAWGS up there. They just went, it was a frame house in Englewood. They just literally went through the side of the house. They basically got a saw, and they sawed out a hole through the side of the wall, the insulation, everything is, I got there was a big hole that a 6-foot guy could work into on the side of the house. Like, they went right around it.
Yeah, we've at one point we called it the Swiss cheese house, jokingly so, but it was actually in Toledo, Ohio, where because we only secure the doors and the windows, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it is still possible, even though it's unlikely, but it's possible that someone gets up on the roof and cuts a hole in the roof, or they cut a hole in the side of the building. And this house in Toledo, we called it the Swiss cheese house because every time we would show up, there'd be another hole in the side of it, like it was Swiss cheese. So every time we would go, our crews would put the window guard over the next hole, and then a few weeks later they would again drill another hole, which, look, the vast majority of the time the crime is cut out simply because if an intruder can't get in here, then they go to a different building, and it's way more difficult to get into a DAWGS secure building than it is to get into anywhere else. But if they're desperate enough, almost any building could be broken into with enough effort, right? But the benefit of our security in comparison to plywood, right? I mean, plywood, someone could typically get it off with a screwdriver or a pretty non-advanced saw. Our assets, there's no exterior hinges or flanges, right? There's nothing that they could hit with a sledgehammer or a hammer or a saw or anything to break off. So you'd really have to be inside of the building to try to get it off or cut a hole through the ceiling.
Got it. All right. So for our listeners who might be interested, do you mind sharing just a little bit of like the process, maybe some rough pricing for someone who's never used this before, but saying like, okay, I've heard enough horror stories, like this is probably the right move for a vacant building or, whatever they may have?
Yeah. So the typical process is you call in, you give us an address, and you say, hey, I think the unit is going to be vacant for a month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. We will send a crew out and hopefully get you. Our rule of thumb is always try to do a new measure and send a quote within 24 hours of the initial call. It's all going to be dependent on the size of the property and how long you want the security to be present. So, for a typical small single family, maybe you're talking $400 for the first month because there's an install, and then $200 per month afterwards. Typical small single family, but it's all based per window and per door per month. So, in comparison with someone getting in and ransacking the place or taking out all the pipes, it is much more effective. Plus, at that point, you're the only one who can enter and leave that building, right? Because the doors have a padlock that's integrated into the design of the door. So when you have the code, you can actually get in and get out. But no one else who doesn't have the code would be able to enter and leave. So you'd still be able to go in. Contractor who you need to go in and do work on the building would still be able to go in, but otherwise no one else is going to be able to go in. And yeah, if we sign up for a longer service period, then the price per window and per door per month is going to drop pretty quickly.
All right, Mark, if you have nothing else, let's wrap this up.
All right, cool. So,
oh wait, Nick, Nick's ready to say something. What do we forget?
The only other thing is that you can find us really easily by going to DAWGS, DAWGS Inc.com or calling 877-883-2947.
Yep, we'll put all that information in the show notes as well too.
All we need is the address. We get a code in 24 hours, and our crews are happy to help you keep those pesky intruders out. So,
good stuff. All right, Mark, we have a Chicago fact. Who are we playing for?
All right, so we're playing for 𝗬𝘃𝗃𝗀𝗃. So Kelly, if myself or Nick gets this question right, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by today's sponsor, which is never more than us, than the Straight Up Chicago brokerage team.
All right. So in the city of Chicago, we got a crime stat here for you. We'll give you some options. For every 10,000 people in Chicago, there are how many burglaries and larceny crimes committed? And these stats are from 2021. So per every 10,000 people, how many burglary and larceny crimes are committed? And is it, for every 10,000, is it 2, 28, 73, or 190?
I'm going to go with 28.
Okay, Nick?
73.
73 for the win.
All right, man. Oh,
so
I was
0.7%, almost 1%.
I wanted to be optimistic, so I was trying to go with less than half of a 1%. So
that's where I would have gone too. But then I thought about it, like, there's all the, like, go to a mall, like how many shoplifters are there per day?
Yeah, okay.
Like that's under burglary. Like it's not just home. Like you start thinking about it, it's like, oh yeah, this makes more sense.
All right, so we still got the question right, thanks to Nick. So Kelly, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by Straight Up Chicago brokerage team. So Nick, thanks for coming on. Tom, thank you as always. Listeners, check out Build Your Team, straightupchicagoinvestor.com. Build Your Team is a bunch of awesome vendors that myself or Tom worked with, and a bunch of people on our network have all depend on these people on Build Your Team to be part of their real estate journey. So check it out, Build Your Team, straightupchicagoinvestor.com. Tom, thank you. Nick, thank you. Listeners, we'll see you on Thursday.
Thanks all.